I'm glad Sonia's better.
Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. It's Wednesday. I'm Sarina Fazan, and we're ready to go on the record. We have a very special show today. We are remembering 9/11, and we will also be talking about Afghanistan. Joining me, two generals, 67 years of service combined. We have General Chip Diehl. Welcome back on the record, General.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. And General Karl Horst, so nice to meet you today. What a pleasure to have you both. I'm in the honor of such presence.
Well, thank you for having us, Sarina.
Our pleasure.
Oh gosh, absolutely. And thank you so much for joining me on this show, particularly as we look back. It's hard to imagine that it is the 20-year anniversary of 9/11 coming up on Saturday. Quite frankly, even to this day, I have a very hard time saying 9/11. I can't see 9/11. It bothers me, as I know it bothers so many Americans. If you don't mind, if you could first start with your background, tell us a bit about yourself. General, why don't we start with you?
I'm a career Army officer. I had the privilege of living out my boyhood dream of being an American soldier, and I did that for more than 37 years. I was enlisted in the infantry. I commissioned in the infantry, and I've had the opportunity to travel to 66 different countries in the world, multiple combat tours. But the greatest privilege is to be able to lead American soldiers in support of this country.
Wow, I mean, it gives me goosebumps to hear that. And General Diehl, if you could give us a bit about your history.
Oh, again, thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Just a real pleasure to be here. But I was born on MacDill Air Force Base.
Wow.
And the circle of life brought me back to command the base I was born on.
Isn't that
And I had a
something?
30-year career at the end, and flew the big cargo planes like you're seeing going in and out of Afghanistan now. Similar, a lot of operations from Rwanda to Just Cause into Panama. So I had a great flying career, but the privilege for me, again, was 9/11, coming back to Central Command, joining the team with General Franks and General Abizaid, and then finally retiring after 30 years of service.
I had the honor of meeting both of those generals. What amazing men, just as yourself. Talk to me about, I don't think any of us will ever forget where we were on 9/11. General Diehl, you were actually in the Pentagon.
I was in the Pentagon, and it was an interesting day because the main thing I would take away from it was amazing to see how the Pentagon and America united because of it. The airplane hit, and I was on the opposite side over on the river entrance to where it hit from. So immediately smoke coming around the rings of the Pentagon, and we all evacuated out onto the parade ground. But immediately you saw the courage and the bravery and the compassion of everyone out there, because they all wanted to go around to where the airplane hit and help. But the short story for purposes of our discussion was, it was amazing how the country came together at that time for that reason. And to this day, that's what I take, is I remember the day, and now 20 years later, we continue to serve the wounded, and the troops and the parents, the Gold Star families that lost loved ones over the 20 years. We continue to serve today.
I have more questions about the Pentagon and that day, but General Horst, let's go to you. You were at Fort Bragg.
I was at Fort Bragg. I had the privilege of being the Chief of Staff of the 82nd Airborne Division. And if you're familiar with the 82nd Airborne Division, you know they have a worldwide deployable mission to be prepared to send a brigade within 24 hours of notice anywhere in the world. I happened to walk into headquarters. I'd been at a combined federal campaign kickoff breakfast, and I walked into the headquarters, and the duty NCO was there, and he had a television monitor, and he got my attention. He says, Colonel Horst, I think you got to look at this. An airplane just hit the World Trade Center, and not sure what it is, whether it's a little one or, he said, a lot of confusion right now. And as we were standing there watching the live feeds coming from New York, the second airplane hit, and he said, "Sir, I think we have a problem." And so I went upstairs, talked to the commanding general of the 82nd, and we immediately went into our N-hour notification sequence, because we anticipate when bad things happen to good people, phone rings at Fort Bragg and paratroopers from the 82nd go somewhere. So we immediately went into a planning sequence. We got guidance from the Pentagon, and within 30 days we had a brigade of paratroopers from the 82nd Airborne Division securing Bagram Airfield that began the journey, began the time in Afghanistan, and it started with paratroopers from Fort Bragg that secured that airfield. And like Chip said, a lot of things happened with 9/11. We sent Division Support Command to the National Capital Region, to Washington, to help there. So we were in both Washington and some of the first troops into Afghanistan within 30 days of 9/11. And so it kicked off a very, very active, very vigorous campaign, both combat support, that lasted for 20 years.
Wow, and we will talk more about Afghanistan
Yes,
in,
ma'am.
in a little while. But General Diehl, let me go back to you and the Pentagon. So we have General Horst here, walking in and rallying the troops. At the Pentagon, at that point, because I know, this happened so quickly, was there any warning? Did you have any warning that a plane could be an imminent threat?
No, in fact, that's what I think alarmed everybody, because we saw the World Trade Center, and at first I thought it was just a little tourist plane just hit the building until the second plane hit. And so then when it hit us and we evacuated, it's like, okay, surprise. But the thing is the way that we all came together and we're out on the parade ground and trying to help, we got word that a second plane, the plane that ultimately crashed in Pennsylvania,
Todd Beamer, let's roll.
could be
like some of the, the
could be
passengers on the plane.
Could be coming to Washington, D.C.
So scary. And President George Bush, we should point out, was right here in the state of Florida, in Sarasota. At an elementary school,
right,
reading books to children. The whole country was in a state of shock. So with the Pentagon, so you got everybody out. There must have been such a state of panic at this point. How many people were in the Pentagon at the time? Do you recall?
Oh, there's 30-something
30,000 people.
30,000 people a day.
Five-sided building.
Wow.
But again, I think what you'll see in the military, the way we were trained, the way we were brought up in our careers, everybody was focused on securing the situation as it is now. Even all the fire trucks are coming, like this, but the Marines and the Navy had that side and the Army on that side. And we just took care of the situation. That's all you could do at that point.
How can, at this point, as we all know, everybody was in a state of panic, a state of shock, sadness. Mm-hmm. You as military leaders carry that weight to secure Americans. How do you do it? How do you do it? How do you put on that brave face? Is it work? It's all about protecting the country.
It's part of our culture. We're civil servants first and foremost, and it's our culture that when bad things happen to good people, someone has to step up and step forward. And so that's what we do. And again, it becomes our culture. It's our value set. It's our ethos. Never leave a fallen comrade. When someone's in need, we go and help. It becomes instinctive as to who we are. Right. And it really changes your perspective on life when you're a servant of others and rallying to help people that are in need.
Well, sadly, this was the deadliest attack on American soil. At that point, almost 20 years ago, no one anticipated anything like this happening. Sadly, now, because it has happened, I think that, and please tell me if you agree or not, that troops might be a little bit more prepared for something like this.
Well, our culture of supporting people in need has transcended into our American culture of preparedness and readiness. If you put a point on the calendar and say what's the most dramatic incident during your lifetime that changed the way we live, it would be 9/11. because we changed the way we travel through airports, we changed the way security is in our major cities, we changed the way we control airplanes within restricted airspace. I will tell you that I had the privilege of being the commanding general of the military district of Washington. And so with that, I was responsible for the National Capital Region. And for 2 years, I was a guy that oversaw security in the capital region. And the changes in procedures, particularly at Dulles and National Airport, there were changes there. There became active radar sites out around the National Capital Region that would allow us to query aircraft coming into Washington, and friend or foe. And so it created an environment of preparedness, if you will. And so airplanes just can't fly in anymore. They get queried quite a ways out, and it gives people an opportunity to respond. There are CHIP's Air Force is always ready with 2 F-16s on a strip alert at Andrews Air Force Base. And when an airplane that doesn't respond to squawking comes into the airspace, those 2 F-16s go out and interdict them before they get anywhere near the Capitol.
You're kidding. Oh my gosh. General Diehl, talk to us about that. So was that put into place after?
It was as a result of 9/11.
They were airborne within an hour over New York.
Yeah.
And so to this day, those that's the protocol.
That's the
They're still
protocol.
on alert, right?
Yeah, there's a large circle around the National Capital Region. I won't tell you how big it is, but it's big enough to, and at the outer stretches of the circle are radars and devices to detect and query aircraft flying into the National Capital Region. And if someone doesn't squawk on the right frequency, they get visited by a couple of F-16s and escorted or change frequency and identify themselves. But I will tell you that it would be very, very difficult to be surprised by an airplane crashing into
Anywhere right now.
in the big cities. You know, there's selected cities that have that protection. First and foremost is our national capital. But I don't think we'll be surprised by any airplanes coming into the National Capital Region based on the defense system around the city and again, how it changed reality in our lives. You know, we have security at the airports, we have security around the airports. So we learned a lot, changed everything.
You look at TSA right now. Every time we go through the airport, we're always looking at changes that are occurring. And then we always said TSA, 9/11.
Right.
What happened because of?
Yeah.
And things like that. You know, one of the things, Sarina, I think your viewers may appreciate too, and this is how we think. Before 9/11, one of the days we remember is Pearl Harbor. And to put things
Absolutely.
in perspective, if you will, in Pearl Harbor we lost 2,403 military. On 9/11 we lost 2,977. We lost from 77 countries. We also had 392, almost 400 foreign friends of ours were lost in the World Trade Center. It is to keep in perspective, you know, that Pearl Harbor we all remember. We all remember 9/11. But the other thing I'd like to step forward to, and let's not forget that in the 20 years since then, for 9/11, as we celebrate the 20 years, we've had 53,000 of our countrymen wounded, severely wounded.
53,000.
And the thing that we like to talk, we talked about it coming over here, was let's never forget those 53,000 that are still living. We did lose 7,000 that gave their lives for us after 9/11. But with those 53,000, as we look forward, and you ask me, what should we continue to do? And we would say, keep an arm around our wounded.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the sacrifice, their families occurred. So whether it's Pearl Harbor, 9/11, or 53,000 wounded, I would just ask your viewers to remember them.
Absolutely. You know, when Chip Diehl came on, when General, you came on our last show, he was talking to Gwen Green, who's the CEO of Tampa Crossroads, which is a great nonprofit here in Tampa.
Very good.
And one of the huge focuses of that group is remembering the military retired veterans and helping them. It just breaks my heart that we need to see more help.
You know, and I would tell you, Sarina, and Chip brings up a really good point about our wounded veterans, and those are only the ones that we see.
That's right.
That's just the tip of the iceberg. Just the tip of the iceberg. Several million men and women have served in the military in the last 20 years. It's the unseen wounds, the post-traumatic stress, the depression, the suicides, and unfortunately, with the activities in Afghanistan, a lot of veterans are asking a question: was this worth it? And there's been a lot of psychological impact on veterans who served as a result of 20 years of this coming to an end. And so those that have visible injuries that they're suffering with also think about the psychological aspect of the injuries that we do not see.
Absolutely. With you bringing up PTSD, as generals, when you're in charge of such a young group of men and women, can you see that? How do you determine that? Do you get them help immediately? What happens in that type of scenario? Because I think a lot of us don't know.
Well, I think the first thing is you see, you know your soldiers and you know your sailors, airmen, Marines. You know the people that you lead, and when you see a decline in their energy, activity, interest, you see their mental state not normal. That's where the chain of command comes in and says, "Hey, do we need to talk? Are you okay?" That's where leaders come in. It's important that leaders stay in touch with their soldiers, and when their behavior is affected by something, you need to ask that question. And so, one of the challenges that we face, and Chip may have a different opinion, but there's always been a stigma against going to ask for mental help, viewed as a sign of weakness. In a highly competitive environment, people who take a knee because they're not feeling good psychologically has previously been viewed as a sign of weakness, and it's important that leaders stand up and say, it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to get yourself right. Because left to their own devices, they take their life. They take things into their own hands.
Well, General, we appreciate you saying that on the record right now, that it's okay to get help.
It's okay to not be okay. Okay, you need to take care of people, and that's what leaders do. Take care of people, and when your people aren't okay, you got to take care of them.
Well,
General, were you going to say something?
There's other facets to that too, because what we've come with the PTSD, which we realize now is real. And if we went through some of the stories that especially our soldiers and Marines endured on the ground, what they saw in their operations, but it's also, we all have different antennae, and we need to appreciate each and everything we hear, because if a spouse comes in and says that Chip is not right, we need to listen to her. If one of our first sergeants, as the general was saying, comes in and says, Sergeant Diehl is not doing well, we got to take it serious. And it's just not what we feel is, oh, by the way, guys, this is real, and we are going to deal with it. I'll give you and the goodness of it is the networks that we all have. We talked today about networking, relationships, and things like that. I'll give you a current one. Again, for your viewers to appreciate. All that's going on in Afghanistan right now is very, very stressful. Brings up lots of memories for especially the troops, the millions that have served, as Karl said, especially the wounded, especially the families. Our VA alerted us, probably about a week ago, 10 days ago, keep watching your fellow veterans for stress, strain, because suicide in this environment becomes a reality. And they alert you to it. And so we all come up on the net and saying, just watch Chip, watch Karl. We want to make sure that everything's okay.
I was saddened by an article I read this morning. 41-year-old Afghanistan veteran was running for a congressional seat in New York, married, 4 beautiful children, beautiful wife. 2 weeks ago, he dropped out of the congressional race that he was in. And yesterday morning, they found him. In a cemetery close to where he lives. He had taken his own life.
Heartbreaking.
And so you ask the question, how does that happen? Why does that happen? I mean, it's just a tragedy on multiple levels. And when you see someone like this, he was well educated. He was an attorney. He was a veteran. Beautiful family. Everything going.
Yeah.
Looked like it was going great for him. And the next thing they find him having taken his own life. And it's an absolute tragedy, and that story plays out over and over and over again throughout this country. And that's why the hidden injuries of combat, you got to pay close attention to, like Chip says.
Right.
I want to go to a break right now. When we come back, we'll talk more about Afghanistan, but we'll talk about how 9/11 is triggering memories that you said with what is happening in Afghanistan. So stay with us. We'll be right back, everybody.
I'm Sarina Fazan, a journalist, producer, and podcast host. With a background in television news, I know how much time and talent it takes to produce a broadcast quality production. But no more. Red House Streaming offers a simple, cost-effective method for capturing live action and streaming it in real time to YouTube, Facebook, or any other website. From single camera shoots or multi-camera productions, conventional or virtual sets, and from the state-of-the-art Red House Streaming Studios to remote locations, the professional crew at Red House Streaming, backed by the technology and reputation of CP Communications, allows you to produce more content at a lower cost and with little to no engineering required. That's why my podcast, On the Record with Sarina Fazan, is streamed live from the Red House Streaming Studios each week. Contact Red House Streaming today at 800-762-4254 or online at cpcoms.com to learn more. I'll see you in the studio.
Welcome back to On the Record, everybody. I'm joined by General Chip Diehl, General Karl Horst, 67 years of combined service. Firstly, we can't thank you enough for serving this country. There are no proper words of thanks. We're talking about and we're remembering 9/11, and we're also going to talk about Afghanistan. General, talk to us what you said at the beginning of the show on what's happening in Afghanistan is really affecting a lot of our troops, right, that served during 9/11.
Well, Sarina, there's really 2 groups that are tremendously affected. The first group are men and women, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Coasties, that served in the theater. Time in the theater, trying to make a difference away from their families. And they're looking at the current state of play today, and they're asking a question: was our effort worth it? Was my time worth it? Was the sacrifice that we made worth it? And then the one that breaks my heart even more so are our Gold Star families. And it's very difficult. It's very difficult to face a Gold Star family, look them in the eye when they ask the question, General, did my son or daughter die in vain?
Gosh.
You know, we sacrificed our national treasure, or the youth of our country. You know, $2 trillion of taxpayers' money, which, you know, money is money, but when you look at the loss of life, we sacrificed the lives and livelihood of young men and women in service of this nation, and you have to ask the question, why do we do that? To have it end up the way it's ended up. And I think that weighs heavily on all these youngsters. It weighs heavily on Chip and I. It weighs heavily on all of us that have served during this post 9/11 period. How it shaped our lives for 20 years. It was deployment after deployment after deployment after deployment, and it takes a toll on you. And you look back and say, is Afghanistan better now, today? than what it was 20 years ago, and that's a tough answer.
General Diehl, your thoughts?
I come at it with it's a long war. 20 years is a long time. Like we were just saying, my son has not served when we have not been at war post 9/11. 20 years. But the way I guess I would do it, when we go to a movie, we all remember the ending. And I think as we have talked about it, because again, yes, we talk a lot to each other. And we talk to families, and we talk to wounded, as we talked about. Anyways, this ending is one that I think everybody's going to remember. And it could have been a better ending, in my opinion. The way that we left and the impact of the way we left is going to be remembered. And it could have been a little bit different. One area that I will remember, I think I mentioned to you that when we started the war, General Franks gave me responsibility for all the coalition countries that came to Tampa to support Central Command, support Special Ops Command. All these countries are now watching us the way this ended. So my look to the future is, what is the ripple off this ending going to be? Karl captured the emotion of it. I'm trying to capture, where do we go from here, the way this all ended.
What would you both have liked to have seen?
Well, I would tell you, Sarina, just my very quick analysis of it. From a foreign policy and national security standpoint, it was a strategic miscalculation.
And why do you say that, General?
It was a strategic miscalculation because it didn't end the way it should have ended. The plan, there were multiple plans on the table that would have caused it to end differently. I think the way that it ended in an at-risk situation, trying to get both Americans and Afghans who supported the United States and NATO in Afghanistan to get them out of Afghanistan. It ended up being an emergency extremist type operation which caused us to take risk. That risk resulted in 13 men and women losing their lives in Kabul. I think there was a better way to do what we needed to do. I think it was a miscalculation because we put ourselves in a situation where we had a single point of failure. We should have had a redundant way to get people out, and we should have done it in a longer, more orderly fashion. And I think the thing that stings the most is, and Chip and I and every man and woman in uniform lives by an ethos that says, we will never leave a comrade behind. It's unconscionable that we would leave Americans behind. And so why we put ourselves in a situation where we allowed that to happen, I simply cannot reconcile what happened.
My point is, the job's not done. He just hit it, right on target. This job's not over with. The movie may have ended, but we got work to do. And that is not America. And again, people are watching America. When you're a world power like America, people lean on you. Mm-hmm. When we were in Afghanistan during the height of the war, if you will, or Iraq, we had over tens of countries with us. We weren't there alone, whether it was Ukraine, Poland, even El Salvador had 1,100 troops supporting us. This job ain't over, but they're watching
every step that we take.
Every step of what we're doing. And because here's the thing, what's next? And when what's next happens, are they going to be reticent? Yeah. Or are they going to be, let's go? When we did 9/11, they came, we called it a coalition of the willing, because we didn't invite them. Now, if we have another event, will they willingly come, is a question mark.
For the Americans and the Afghan supporters that are over there, are we going to be able to get them home?
I can't say with a high degree of confidence that we're going to be able to get them all out before we find ourselves in a hostage situation. And so as you get into who are the Taliban and who is the government that follows, the Haqqani network, closely aligned with the Taliban, are famous hostage takers. The Haqqanis had Sergeant Bo Bergdahl for a number of years. And what the Haqqanis learned is if you take Americans hostage, you can negotiate for things that you want. And so I think that the Americans that are still in Afghanistan are at a very high risk of, one, not being able to get out before they get scooped up by someone that wants to hold them as hostage for things in the future. And I'm not optimistic that we're going to get all the Americans out in a timely manner.
General Diehl?
Couple points. One, tapping on to Bergdahl, we gave up 4, 5 Haqqani prisoners who are now in the government of the Taliban. They announced it yesterday that at least a couple of them are now leaders of the Taliban.
Gosh, honestly, I think my heart skipped several beats, to hear that.
So the gentleman
That's so scary.
The gentleman who was the mastermind of the Taliban campaign to surge into Kabul was one of the 5 guys that we gave up for Bo Bergdahl. He was supposed to stay in Qatar. He was supposed to be on house arrest and stay in Qatar, was not to return to Afghanistan, was not to return to the battlefield. And in fact, he returned to the battlefield in a major way. And as Chip said, 3 of the 5 are now members of this emerging Taliban government. And so I think the object lesson you take from that is be careful who you trust.
The other thing we come out of it is little things like, if given the mission, we could do it. However, I don't know if we'll be given the mission. And the thing that would make me cringe, and again, this is my opinion, to just offer money for free passage is not America. We should never let them, remain there. But come on, let's stand up on our feet. This is America. This is what we believe in. And we can do this, but now we got to go back in to do it. Can we do it? Yes. But we should never have had this ending, is where my theme is.
One of the things that we learned in dealing with the Middle East and in terms of sharing power or balances of power is when one power leaves, something else fills the void. Mm-hmm. And so I read an article this morning that the Chinese are already negotiating with the Taliban for control of Kabul, or for Bagram. Chinese would like to go to Bagram. I think that there's some discussion with the Russians. I think some of our allies and partners are looking for friends that might be more reliable than we are. I think this was a major setback for our credibility in the NATO community. I think it was a major setback for our credibility on the national scene, and the global scene. Certainly Taiwan is looking and saying, gosh, how dependable will those Americans be? Saudis are looking in and saying, how dependable will the Americans be? And so when your long-standing allies are now questioning your credibility as a nation, I think it causes a real strategic dilemma for us and for our allies.
It's a very tough discussion because, as we all know, there's very strong opinions on both sides, and I cannot even tell you how much I appreciate your opinions and taking them on the record. I do want to pull back and ask you something, though. Like after 9/11, and again, it's hard to believe, but on Saturday it'll be 20 years, we saw several people wanting to join the military to protect this country. I want to thank you both because you both have children, three boys. You each have 3, and all of them are serving.
Son-in-law and oldest daughter.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, thank them also for their service. Do you think at this time right now, what would you say to those young people that we have? Would you encourage them to enter our armed forces and protect this country?
I would, number one, I would never discourage anyone from stepping up and volunteering to serve their nation.
And that was probably a poor way of asking the question, quite frankly.
well-
I didn't mean it that way.
But
I meant
no,
it
but
like.
yeah, but so I think the tough part. I think there's a lot of moms and dads out there that are saying, why do I want my son or daughter to serve? I enlisted in the Army, and we were still in Vietnam, and Saigon had not fallen yet, but it was on the way to falling, and I was asked a lot by my peers, my classmates, why on earth would you want to join the Army? You could get sent to Vietnam. Look at the mess Vietnam is in. I think we find ourselves in a similar situation now, with people saying, why would you want to join the military? Why would you want to be part of that? So I think it's been a tremendous blow to our credibility. But on the other hand, this country needs talented, bright, energetic, ambitious young men and women to fill the ranks, to make our military what it is. And this country needs a strong military. And it will only have a strong military when our best and brightest raise their hand and say, I want to be an American soldier. I want to be an American airman.
Right.
So very well put, General Diehl.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. Here's my thing is where our hearts and the flame inside our hearts may be a little dimmed, it's still there. And our country, our people right now, our young men and women, our sons, our daughters, who they are with, they believe in this country. They know we have a good way of life, that we, everything to do with that flag, our history, where we are and where we're going. Space is a frontier that's just gonna open to everyone. And I would also talk to parents about all this is, I think inside them, they like the military, they like the way of life, they like the discipline, but they also like the passion that we bring. You know, the band of brothers. It's there. We just gotta ratchet it up a little bit more. And I would encourage them because again, we've done this with many people that are coming through high school and they're coming, where should my son go? Try the military. When they come back from basic, they are young women and young men that you said, that's my son? They come back. It doesn't take 6 to 8 weeks. So my point is, the flame's there, the belief is there, the courage is still there. It's a great place to start. And I think everybody is still proud of what our military represents. And yes, I'd join in a heartbeat.
Yeah, and I think, Chip said earlier, talking about 9/11 and the impact on men and women that wanted to enlist, that wanted to sign up, that wanted to be part of something special. Chip and I came through the aftermath of Vietnam when our military had been pretty much decimated, unpopular, and we spent most of our careers rebuilding our military into a formidable fighting force. It took us until 1989 with the invasion of Panama and taking out Manuel Noriega. Tremendous joint operation between the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, the Marines to do that. That started us back on a positive step upward. People said, God, that's amazing what just happened. And then you follow that by Saddam Hussein's invasion of Kuwait in August of 1990. In 100 days, we liberated Kuwait and gave it back. And people said, what an amazing military we have that was able to do that. And we reduced the amount of casualties on both sides. The president was behind that. They said, look, this needs to end before we kill more people than we need to, and so we stopped it. But our country said, God, what a great military this is. And then 9/11, and you see the response to that, and everyone said, God, what a great military this is. What we have to be careful is that we keep that sentiment amongst American people, what a great military you have. Because at the end of the day, when hard stuff has to be done, it's young men and women wearing a uniform of our country, carrying an M4 carbine or an aid bag that goes in and helps people. And it's a great military. And we just got to keep that.
Absolutely.
Okay, we cannot allow the aftermath of this long war in Afghanistan to
dim the light. As
Chip said.
As General Diehl
Still
said.
a great military.
No, but I guess there's a couple points I would ask again is, please remember our wounded, because again, their arms are not going to grow back. And they're with us. They're our heroes. But you know, the other thing that America also needs to is role models. And what I'd offer to your viewers and everybody, in great appreciation of the discussion we've had, is everybody looks to sports figures, maybe entertainers as their role models. But check out MacDill Air Force Base, U.S. Central Command, your neighbor who happens to be in the military. You might find a pretty darn good role model for your kids and for everybody. The military are a great place to start, and every once in a while, look at them with great pride like it's in your heart, and you'll realize that we got it pretty damn good here in this country.
I think you look at there's a young guy that plays for the Pittsburgh Steelers by the name of Alejandro Villanueva.
Yeah.
Alejandro Villanueva is actually dual citizen. His father was a colonel in the Spanish Air Force. He was born in the United States, so he had American citizenship. Graduate of the United States Military Academy, infantry officer, ranger, multiple tours in Afghanistan, and he stepped aside, and he's now a role model in the National Football League. He is a football player, and he's a soldier.
He's a great guy.
The other thing that I think is encouraging, and it warms my heart, is to see young men and women who previously served in the military that are now stepping up and volunteering to run for elected office in
Absolutely.
There you go.
Congress.
Right, exactly.
Absolutely.
So the number of young men and women that are stepping up and saying, I'm going to take my experience as a veteran and I'm going to go to Capitol Hill because I want to make a difference for America. These are the same kids that said, I'm going to make a difference for my country in uniform. They now want to make a difference wearing a multicolored tie or a nice sport coat.
Well, is that part of let's talk about this really quickly, General. So this is your book, Common Sense Leadership. Do you talk about what we talked about here today, and where can we get your book?
I just give it away.
Oh.
I don't sell it. I just give it away.
Okay, and you both signed it, or you signed it for me.
I did.
Thank you.
So what it is, someone asked me at the very end of, as I was getting ready to retire, a young Air Force major was helping me out one day, and he came in and said, General, you have 5 minutes until your next briefing. And I said, okay, good. He said, sir, can I ask you a question? I said, sure, what's up? He says, you've been doing this Army thing for a really long time. Do you suppose maybe you could share your top 10 leadership tips with me?
Wonderful.
And I said, sure.
That's like common sense.
And I said, when do you want to do that? He goes, well, you've still got 4 minutes until the briefing starts. Oh, you want them now? And he said, yeah. I mean, can you do it? I said, okay. Well, it's almost football season, so we're going to do the 2-minute drill. We're going to do the hurry-up offense. And so I gave him, off the top of my head, off the bottom of my heart, I gave him 10 tips.
Yeah.
And those 10 tips are right in this book.
And because Chip and I are old guys, I have to write things down or I'll forget it. So I went to the briefing and I said, there may be something there, because that was an instinctive reaction to a question. So I wrote down the 10 tips.
Wonderful.
And then someone said to me, hey, you got any leadership tips? I said, well, as a matter of fact, I do. And he said, we got to write a book. And I said, I don't need to write a book. He goes, 10 tips, 10 vignettes, 10 reflective questions, you got a book.
Well, this is wonderful.
So,
this is wonderful, and I appreciate it. And this is, I have to say,
common
sense, which I need to read. So I have to say, this is the longest show I think that we've done on the record, but it's been such an honor and privilege to have you both on. Again, as I started the show, there are no proper words of thanks and service. And we really appreciate all of you watching. We'd appreciate if you shared the show to relay the important messages that both of these generals have talked about. You can find me on multiple platforms. And here they are. We like, to show this. But again, thank you again so much.
Thank you for
joining
having us, Sarina.
Absolutely.
It's been a privilege and a pleasure to spend time with you this morning.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Thank you so much, both. Thank you both so much. Look, I'm stuttering all over my words. Stay safe, everyone, and we'll see you next Wednesday.